So, hi everybody and welcome back to the C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 170 and in this video we solve our short exercise, and in the exercise I said in my last video that we want to convert a login account which we already created in one of our earlier exercises in a class, so that we can use this login account as a class. And the reason why we do this is we can include this class later in other files, and we want also exercise and train all about how to convert classes, use classes, and so on. All right, so in my case I have created this login account here, what you can see here on the screen, and I will convert this one in a class. It's very easy. I hope you tried this one as well, because then you can see that there are little differences in a class when you try to convert like normal functions which are not included in a class, which are just defined here in the global namespace. And all these variables, when you convert them, then there are slightly little differences which will point it out. And in my case, let's start. I hope you tried it too and you succeeded, and if not, no worry, just try it and see the differences and see the errors and try to research them online so that you get start to get an understanding. So just try to solve your errors. That's the key feature in exercises. And yeah, with that said, let's get started. First of all, you can see I have here global variables here on top. I have here forward declarations for the functions here on the bottom, and we need forward declarations in a global namespace when we have not a class. Only then when the main is here called and all the functions needed before the definition is there. That we know already. I hope so. So with that said, I change here the position of my main because I want my main on the bottom. And the reason for that is all the stuff here on top, what you can see, I put in a class, which means I surround this one with a class. And I think we know already there is this, you can select all, right click, perhaps it works, perhaps not. Let's see, there is this right click, then you can go here to this snippets. These are some codes, and then you can click the surround with, and here you can see here is a class word. Of course, it works also with a struct, I think. Onion is here, struct, and all that what we have. So let's make here a class, and you see it is class. And when you do this one here, the snippet, you can see they created here a public constructor destructor. We have not talked about this one. Let's delete this one. And you can see the problem, they put all this in private. I put this in public specifier. And let's see what they did here more. So automatically for us, they created outside of the class this constructor and destructor. I kick it out for right now. You can keep them, of course. Normally you should keep them probably. But in my case, I kicked it out to show you that I just put all the code just in a class. But when we put all the code in a class, you can see we have some errors here because I saved that one. And yeah, there are some errors, and we have to talk about these little errors. First of all, here in this variables, this global variables, actually there are no more global variables because they are now class variables. Let's call them just variables here. And here functions, we can make here a specifier. Don't need to do that. You know, when you define one specifier, it will count till you define another specifier. But if you wanted to make it clear that here are the function section, we can declare this, delete this one, write this one, and you know, this one are function section which are public. Like I said, this one you don't have to do. I make this just yeah, because we are starters, I make this way, but you don't have to. So let's don't do it. I hope you understand it. When here it is defined that it counts then for all, but careful, all above this one will be treated like the default access specifier, which is class, which is private. Keep that in mind so that you're not confused with that. And then we are here at our arrow. What happens here? This was working before. Let me copy this one fast. So you can see I copied this out of the class here. Let's put it out of the class. And out of the class, it is working. But inside of a class, this variable, and this variable is, by the way, a array variable, which we created here. You can see it here with that one. But this creation of an array variable is special because I use this initializer here, where the compiler is automatically counting how many elements it in it is, because we initialized all the elements here, and the compiler can count it and know exactly how many elements it should initialize this variable. But this kind of stuff is not working anymore in a class, which means we have just to specify the elements. That's why when I hover my mouse over it, it says here incomplete type. Incomplete means it is not full defined. The compiler says there are parts missing. I need a full understanding of this one. And in this case, like I said, the compiler is just counting this one, and it is replacing the missing parts here. So it's this initializer works here, but here you can see the initializer is not more working, which means we have just to count how many elements we have and then just write it here in it, because this one is another initializer. You can write the elements here and then initialize it. So here you have to write the elements in a class. That was our first little difference, and the same goes here. This is also a database, 2 elements here. That's why I write 2 here. But all other things looks similar. That's interesting, that's nice and good. Here is the next new thing. It is not an arrow right now. It is at least not as an arrow declared. But if I would start now the compiler here, it would cause an error with this one. Let me see if I can do this. Let's comment this out for a moment. So now all looks fine, right? But what happens here with this forward declaration? This is another thing. When I start this one here, there is something, an error again. And it says here something like member function already defined declared. So here I have a definition. Here I have also a declaration, because you know that at this point we have already this declaration at the same time, but we have here a forward declaration, and this one is not working in a class, at least not at this point here. And yeah, which means we have find a solution. What is the solution? Very easy, actually. You just kick it out, because, and that is new, in a class you don't need a forward declaration. Why not? First of all, why we needed a forward declaration normally before we don't need it. The reason was before I used it here in main, right? Let's comment this out again. In main, I called a variable and a function, and this function was defined after main. It was here, and then we already needed this forward declaration. But if I have this definition of this function call here before main, then, which means the compiler already identified this name here before main, this login account was called, for example, this one here, then it was okay. But that was out of a function, out of a class. And inside a class, the nice thing is we don't care where it is. So this, for example, let me show you this one. Here we have here this login account, right? This login account is check input name database function, right? And this check input database name is here down, which means that's strange. Normally it should be before, but because it is in a class, it does matter if it's after this, it is on the last place, or if it's at the first place, does matter. And that's new, and that's convenient actually a little bit. But if you are going outside of a class, don't forget that's not working with functions outside of a class. Okay, that was the second thing which was new, which is nice actually. We have not to care about function positioning, ordering, because outside of a class we have to consider this one. And let's see if we find something else there, because now it looks really nice. And when I go through, I think this one is nice. Of course, constructor. And you see when I surrounded this class here, let me delete this one here. This was just a test code. When I surrounded this class here with this snippet, it already created a constructor, a destructor. This destructor you can forget right now, but it created this constructor and it defined it even outside of the class. But we don't have to create a constructor if we don't need a constructor. We can use the compiler defined implicit constructor. What means that? What means that? That means if I create now here a variable of this class, my class, okay, that was also bad. I have to change the class name here. I forget this because I created this automatically created class. Let's call this, of course, login, because it's a login class. And now I have here this login class. And now I can create a login variable, also type login. And you can see this is a little bit different than before, because all time when you create a variable, check where the type is. In my case, this class is not in a namespace. Like my other examples before, for example, this std was in a namespace. My house was in a house namespace. In this case, I have not put it in a namespace. I could put this one also in a namespace, but in this case, I have it not. And that means this login class is in the global namespace. And that means I can create a variable just like this without this resolution operator. But here, one reminder, this one will work as well. Why is this one working? Because this one is searching in the global namespace. So, but we make this one here. Let me see. Let's create a variable name login. Let's call it coders login. Login. One fast. Let me show you this one as well, that this one is working as well, because we have not seen this one so much, and it is good that we see stuff what we have not seen too much, because it can happen that anyone is using that, and you should not confused with that. Let me explain this one fast, why this one is using again. So what happens here is this login class will be searched, because I set this colon is all time what a resolution operator, and it tries to find the right side, which is my login, in the left side. But here is nothing. Nothing is not true, because here there's nothing has a special meaning. In this case, it is the global namespace of this file, and the global namespace means not in a class, it is here outside, right? Here where we start, where the compiler starts to read, and all which is not anyhow in a namespace or anything else. It is considered to be a global namespace, and we talked a little bit short about it, but you can see nobody is using that one. All are using this normal creation here. So I hope that's clear. I showed you only this one because it can happen that anyone is doing this one. All right, with that said, let's continue here a little bit more. The next point is, okay, what I did here, why is this working again? Very fast repetition. The reason why this one is working, this variable here, because the reason why is normally a class has a constructor, but I have not provided here a constructor. But we learned if you don't provide a constructor, the compiler will implicitly provide a constructor, and that's why this one is working. But if you provide a constructor, which is a non-default constructor, then this one will not working. But if you have a default constructor which is covering this case, this one will working too. So what I mean with a default constructor which is covering this case, because we learned also, let's make a constructor fast just for a default constructor. Well, how we make a default constructor again? Yes, we take the class name, which is login. So let's take this one. Let's write here perhaps a constructor place, constructors, and so that we have here also a special place for them, so they are not at the same place there with the functions. And here I start with the constructor name, and then I can make a default constructor. We learned something like that. So we have the name, and we learned also that this version, if you have nobody here, you should not use that, and you should use this equal default perhaps, or if you use this one here, this is a default constructor. Let me show the other ways too. This one is a default constructor. Then this one is a default constructor. All this kind of stuff we learned. So something which has parameters is also a default constructor. Let's call this one, let's say what I can assign here. Nothing like all time. Okay, then let's make a fun name. Username param. For example, this one is, first of all, this one is not a default constructor. Right now, it is not a default constructor, but we learned when we have parameters, we can still convert this one in a default constructor when we do what? All parameters need to have default values. For example, if I provide here user name as a default value, then this one will be treated as well as a default constructor. All right, we repeated this one, and now with that one, I can use this one, and the difference is now that I can provide here arguments, so that or I can't, or I don't provide arguments here. You can see I don't provide arguments, which means it will use this default argument here. If I provide an argument, for example, let's make it this way, because this is coder's login. Let's say here instead username. Username is the coder itself. Oops, string. Coder. And yeah, you can see, and this one is just one way to initialize. You know also that we can use it with this round brackets. Here, this one works with this curly brackets, but this one works also with this round brackets. And with this round brackets, I said you have to be careful a little bit, because when you create something like that, that looks similar to what? Yes, function. That's why some people use it, some people not. I probably prefer this one here, probably. It is most time also safer, this initializer here, this curly braces. I don't know if you can use it in all places. That's there are all time some special rules, but in general, this one will work. And then you are not confused with this, or let's say not irritated with this, that this one looks like a function, because when you have here a login, a return type login, here a function name, and if this one has here this round bracket, like I said, it's not a function, but it looks like that you are calling a function with an argument coder. So that can irritate people too, and so don't get irritated by that. So we repeated this as well, and here let's go on. This one I created now this login, and let's let's continue here. Here one more word, of course, this initializer. You can initialize values here in this body, but don't do this. We learned we initialize most time here outside with this initializer, which starts with a colon, and then you can get the variables which you want initialize. In my case, I do nothing, but you can, for example, just for test purposes, username input a default value. There is already a default, but we can give it here, initialize the default value here as well. You take here this input, and then you initialize that what you want. And of course, there are different ways too, round brackets, curly brackets, so you have to watch which one you want. So let's initialize this one with also nothing, just for fun. And of course, if you want more, don't forget it, you can comma separate it, and most time they go down because these names can be very long, and then it's just style if you go down or make it in one line and so on. All right, I hope you remember this kind of stuff too, but here in my case, I don't need that because I initialize nothing. Actually, I have here nobody as well, and this username does also need nothing. So in my case, I kick all out, which means I provide no constructor, nothing, because I don't do anything with that. I provide only a constructor when I really want that something, do something with it. In my case, we don't have, and this one will not work as well now, because when I have something like this, let's comment this out fast. Let's save this, test this, and you can see now we have a problem. Well, you don't see it. That's also interesting. Why we have not a problem here? Normally, okay, this is initialized, this is value initialization. All right, it sucks. All right, so this one, what I done here is, yeah, this one is now initializing this value here, and that was not my intention. That was bad. I wanted to show you that we can't use this one here, because this one is also another initialization way. Let me show you what I mean. Now when I print out the that I wanted not to do. Anyway, skip this part here, because now I initialize accidentally this one here. And that's why it's working. This is, we talked about this. I don't know if we talked about this initialization way with this curly braces. I think in structs I said you can initialize a struct from top to down, but in class I don't set that so far. I didn't set that. I don't know. I have no clue. But here what I did is, let me show you what I did, is now this one here, username input. I print this username input out, username input, here is it. That should be not happen, and yeah. So when I put this out, you can see I did something what I should not do, and here's coder. This way, I don't know if we talked about it. This is a way you can initialize values, but important is it is from top to down. So what I mean with that is, if you start here, for example, accidentally with a number, let's start here accidentally with a number, for example 5, and try this one. This will not work now. This initialization goes from top to down, and you can see this as well with this one here. Let's say I want here this coder. This one is also a string. Let's say this coder should be here the first one, right? But accidentally I wrote here the password first one, but the password is also a string, which means that will work. Let's make here a password as a string, and this one is of course putting also the wrong, because it starts from top to down initialization. This one will now put this wrong password here in user name input. This is also to be considered that. So what I want to point out is the order is very important. Let me show you this one here too. Let's make not copy this one, username input. Let's see. Yeah, that's okay. Username input. Let's I put now username input out again, right? And because I started now with this one, you can see now I have a number. Yeah, that's the problem. So I wanted not show you, normally not. What I want to show you is before that, when I have here no constructor, that you can use this one. You should use this one here, and it's not possible to use the other one. But yes, you can initialize values here. That I forgot to tell you anyway. Yeah, but now you know it. Okay, let's continue. That was just with these constructors. I hope it is not too confusing. But here I use now the default constructor. That's why I have nothing here, and it is working. All right. I think when I use the other one, I don't know, can I use this one here as well? Oh, this one I can't use, because this one you can see when I use now here parentheses with nothing, that you can't do. Why not? Because you can see this one is converted now to a function, which means the return value login. You can see it indicated by this color, by the way. It's now yellow, and when it's yellow, it's all time indicating it's now treated as a function. And you can hover your mouse over it, and then you can see, yes, it is treated as a function call, or something like declaration in this case. All right, with that said, forget all about this, but make just a variable. And we continue, uncomment this one. But we have here some errors now. I have created now my class login. Very nice, nice, good, good. And now I need constructor. I don't need a constructor, like I said, because I don't initialize anything and use not the constructor here. And I created a variable, which means they call it an object, but I call it still a variable, which has the type login. And here I have this arrows here, found name and password. How I can solve that now? Which means I need just access this login and this place. And how we make this, we learned it. We just take here, this one here, we copy this one, and then you can go here to this place, paste it in, and then we use, of course, the dot, which is the access specifier, and it was this found name and password, I think. And you see, that's it. So we just changed here that we have to use this variable and then this dot here, this member access specifier, because this variable name is now in this account, this login account. I want to access it. That's it. And the same thing I do actually with the function call, also with the dot. You paste first the name and then this member access specifier, and this one works as well. So, and here we can already test it. That's nice. So let's test this. And it is exactly doing the same thing like before. You can see here I type in and I accept it. The only difference is now I converted this one to a class, and we'll repeat it a little bit. So I hope you did something similar or even better than me. And if so, very nice. If not, don't worry. That's why we are here, because this is a tutorial where we are learning. So that's also cool if you are not able to do it, because then you have the chance to learn it and to try it next time. Don't worry about something like that. Just try till you get it. And one more thing I wanted to repeat, which is what we started in the last video a little bit, that was creating pointers. We will need pointers in our next video. That's why let's repeat pointers again. How we pick, of course, you can create a pointer, right? So we can create now with our class, which I created a login, a pointer class, a pointer variable. And how we make this, again, we take the class, which is our type, login, and this time I wanted a pointer type, which means I need also this asterisk. So this one is a pointer type, and now I choose just a variable. Let's call this pointer login. Pointer login, and it's similar to this other one, but careful. A pointer is a pointer, which means you still should assign at start a null pointer or null or 0, but the new version is this null pointer. Use all time a null ptr if you assign nothing at start, which means if you don't want that the pointer is pointing anywhere, but I want to normally assign something, or you can assign this later, because sometimes at start you don't know where it goes, then you make this version, and later when you know where it goes, then you assign it. And we learned the pointer assignment is all time what? We take the pointer has a value, because now I want to assign a value to this one, and the value of a pointer is what? An address. And of course you have to find this address. In my case, I want that it points to this pointer here. Let's go here to this pointer course. How we make this? We need the address operator, because if I just write this one here, let's make it without address to see what happens without address. Because this one here, it's already complaining, and you can read here, no suitable conversion function from login to login pointer, which means later we can even program something like this one, a conversion thing. But right now we don't need this. Normally you don't want this. So what you do is just use the address operator, because pointer needs the address and not the object itself, this variable here. And then this works. And why I did now use the pointer, how I can use it, let's test this one. Instead of using this login account, I can use the pointer. What is here again the difference about the pointer and the login account? Fast again. The difference is this one is using it directly and this one is using it indirectly, which means with a pointer. So the only difference is, so there are many differences, but here we're using a pointer, so with another variable who is now getting access to this one. So I hope you know what a pointer is, but here more important is how we use it to access it, the members here of this class, because it's a little bit different. In our last video we learned this. Now I use here, instead of this coders login, for example, I use the pointers login. Let's use, because now the pointer is anyway pointing here, which means it is using exactly the same thing like here, which means the pointer using exactly all the class here. And I can do the same thing here like before. And when I make here a dot, you can see I have again available all the public things, and I want this found name password. And in our last video we learned something new. So when I make this one and save this, I don't know why it's not converted. Normally it's converting. Okay, let's see one more time. Dot and found name password. Now it converted. There was something like a conversion problem. But you can see normally when you do this dot, this one is in Visual Studio converted to this arrow sign. And that we learned in the last video, short introduction. I said a pointer has this has also a member access, and instead of this dot we have a pointer symbol here. This is our overloaded operator again. And why is this overloaded? Because normally before this pointer was used, they used this other presentation which is older and not used, but I still show you this because there are probably some programmers who will use that. And the older presentation is this one here. You can see we have here this part here, which is the differencing a pointer, and after we differencing a pointer we use the dot, which is member access, and then we go to the member access which we want. And here, very important, this here I show you only because there are probably programmers who use it, but we as a starter, we will not use it because many are using just the short version, which is this pointer, which is easier, because the other version which I showed you before with this asterisk and differencing, that can cause confusion when we combine this with other things, and that's why this presentation here is much easier and is the exact same thing like before. That's why just use that, and that goes here for this one as well. So you can here use as well this pointer login and make this dot. You can even, I make here a dot. The reason for that is I know Visual Studio is converting them automatically to a pointer. So that's why I make a dot here. Normally you can here, you don't have to, you can make also an arrow, but arrow needs 2 clicks, which means I need a this symbol here and this symbol, which is an arrow symbol. Instead I make just a dot, and Visual Studio is converting. And what was the call here? I forgot it. Login account, right? I hope. So, and you can see this one is working as well with pointers, if I made this not wrong. Yes, indeed, we have here coder. I give a wrong password, it's good, and I give a right password, and I'm in. All fine, all nice. This pointer we need for the next video. That's why I repeat it. And of course we have not talked about pointers in depth, because pointer has so many places and so many things to talk about. But in the next video we learn something, a new keyword, which is the this keyword, and that's why we need a little bit repetition about this pointer especially. One more thing about pointers. The pointers which we learned so far, this one here, are very basic things. We will see in future that pointers are not very famous in C++ because they cause many problems. And we will talk about this more, and that's why there are different kind of solutions. What I mean with that is in future you will see they try to avoid this row pointers. They are called row because you are making here direct access, and then you have this memory management, and most time many errors, many bugs are caused by this row pointers because the programmer was not careful and so on. But that's for the future. In the next video we are just talking about the new keyword this, which is a keyword which is used in a class, and not only in a class. I think there is one more place, but we use it, the simple version, in a class. So with that said, I hope you made a very good and nice program and successfully converted your little account or login, whatever. Perhaps you made a big account or login or something like that and converted in a class. And you see, when we start to put all things in a class, there are slightly changes, right? They are not all treated like outside of the class, and this kind of changes we have to learn. And there are much more to learn about classes in general because there is so much more, but step by step. With that said, I hope you succeeded with your program, and if you have any questions or any complaints like all time, write it in comments, you know it. And with that said, have fun, don't give up, and see us in the next video. Bye.